A neighbor gave me 3 of these IBC totes, which stands for intermediate bulk container. And I think what I want to do with these things, I've seen this done on a few other channels, mainly Outdoors with the Morgans, and I want to kind of replicate the same thing that Mike did with his IBC totes, and he made some firewood. They're like a firewood rack, and I think I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to try to at least, but what I also want to do is I'll get this plastic lid, this plastic tote out of the metal, and I think what I'll do is I'll try to cut that to fit over and make a roof also. Mike said to cut this thing at a diagonal, so I'm going to try doing that, and we will hopefully see that this thing will work out. And then I guess you can zip tie it to the sides, drill some holes, and zip tie a little A-frame made out of this plastic. I think this thing's 200 and, what is this, 200 and maybe 300 gallons. This is a pretty big one, but it measures 39, well, actually, let's go inside. The inside, 38 on the inside by 46. And then down here, we're looking at roughly 4 foot. So 48 inches. So I'm going to pull this plastic tote out of this metal thing, and we'll go from there. So let's get started.
The next tote I may do this slightly differently. I'm really not entirely sure. But I've got to say, this is definitely my first time taking apart one of these totes. Like I said, the neighbor he wasn't using these, and he was happy to get rid of them. And I figured, heck, maybe I could use that for something. So after seeing that video on Outdoors with the Morgans, I figured, well, maybe I'll try something like this on my own and see how this thing works. I wanted to make sure that this one has a roof, because who knows when the next time I will be moving this tote full of wood. And I've got to say, these things are pretty big. It's definitely surprising how much wood you'll be able to fit into one of these totes. So what I'm doing here is I'm just getting kind of things set up to cut out this one side here. I was trying to figure out which side I should cut this on. There are 2 similar sides on this thing, and there are another 2 similar sides. So you really only have 2 different choices to cut these things. And I figured I would try it with this side first, and then see how that goes. And if it doesn't go good, what I'll do on the next tote is I will cut the other side. These things are not exactly square, so you have to just kind of, how do you want the rainwater to come off this thing? Which side do you want to load it from? Which side can you get the forks under? With these totes, you can get, if you have forks on a machine, whether it be a skid steer, a front end loader, a forklift, whatever the case may be, we have it's a 3-point bale carrier that we're using as a set of forks for this. I know they say not to do that, but I don't see why you couldn't. Now I will have to do some modifications to those forks to get them to fit underneath this tote. We are like an inch shy on the one side, and we're like 10 inches shy on the other, or something like that. So I will probably have to cut those bale forks apart, and then what I'll have to do is cut them down and re-weld it again, which is no big deal. I can do that. I should be able to weld that all together. So what I'm doing here is just kind of cutting this tote in half diagonally, And there's a couple diagonals you could do this. You could do it the way that I'm doing it, or you could do it from the bottom left of the screen to the upper right. So if that makes any sense. And pretty much just like that, there's the roof. And it sheds water fine, and it shouldn't let snow build up on top of it. You know, this is a pretty steep angle, so I'm hoping that any snow that's wants to cling to this will eventually slide right off. Now, I've got to say, I have another video that I made a pallet bin out of just pallets for storing wood, and I've got to say, this right here is far better. It is so much better than that ever was. I think this is lighter than all those pallets, so it'd be easier to move around, and also it kind of contains everything better because it wraps around on the front instead of it being totally open. It's made out of metal, which has a galvanized coating on it, which will hopefully make this thing last quite a long time. I know the bottom of this thing is getting kind of rusty, and I would actually like to just put some gray or aluminum colored Rust-Oleum paint on the bottom of this thing just to try to make it last as long as I possibly can. And I had to build a shed roof on the other one just with another pallet, and I just ended up using a tarp. It was kind of a thin tarp, and that thing didn't last very long. So this right here, the sides of the tote in the middle of the plastic, they're maybe 3/16 of an inch thick. I think they're something like that. So they're not super thick, but I will tell you what, this is leaps and bounds better than a tarp. Those tarps, they blow around in the wind, and then they rip, and then they shred, and mice can chew holes in them, and the tarps are just not a good way to cover your wood pile. These things right here, this tote, I will hopefully have for a very long time. It's going to live a hard life, though, being outside and, out in the elements and whatnot. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to get this thing cut as straight as possible. This right here was probably one of the most difficult parts of this whole thing, and just trying to get everything to match up, and I did eventually get it pretty good, so I'm pretty happy with this thing so far.
Here's what the finished Firewood tote looks like. I have the plastic roof on it. I also cut out a hole for you to go in with your head here and then bend down to pick up the firewood. I also put in these two upper supports. I put those back in. I am hoping that it's going to keep these sides from wanting to flop out like that. But I cut this thing in half, and this one I can still use. It has the nozzle in it, and this one just has the end thing in the back right in there. Now we do have a set of forks on the we'll probably use the Alice to pick this up once I get this thing fully loaded. Yeah, I'll tell you what, this thing looks pretty good. I know some people would say, oh, that top's a little weird, but it's this is a good start. But I have just 4 zip ties holding this thing on, so at some point what I might do is put on either some more substantial ones or just put on some maybe I have metal zip ties. Heck, I could even use what is it, a crimp connector. You could crimp them on. I mean, you could do quite a few different things with this. But there you go, that's a firewood storage rack, and I got this side here all cut out, so pretty much you can stack. I think I'm going to stack the firewood going this way, pretty much all the way up to probably right about here. So there you go. I'm pretty pleased with this thing. This is pretty neat. So I hope everyone enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more, and hopefully we will see you all in the next one. I'm going to go inside and get warmed up because I'm sure you guys can tell it's pretty cold out here. It's probably 23 or 22, maybe it's probably 20 degrees right now, and if there was a pretty good wind going, and it is it's pretty cold. It probably feels like about 10 out here. There you go. There's a firewood tote. Pretty sweet.